prefer those who heard Nerfs, not Nerf Herders. It's derogatory.
I'm Patrick DeMarco, and I'm a Scruffy Looking Nerf Herder.
Yeah.
Nerf Herder.
You could be a scruffy looking Nerf Herder too.
Oh, says Spit, is it already time for another episode of the Infernal Brotherhood of Scruffy Looking Nerf Herders? I wonder what they got cooking for us this week. Inform Lord Vader at once and tell him to bring me that rebel scum.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey.
Time for another episode of the Infernal Brotherhood of Scruffy Looking Nerf Herders.
Yeah.
Let's get into this.
I'm excited. What are we talking about this time?
We are talking about Emperor Palpatine.
The favorite bad guy that I hate to death.
Absolutely.
Like, to death. I don't know. So, I mean, we're going to be getting into the nit and gritty of this character here, but just as before we even dive into that, do you have a preference for what's now considered Legends Palpatine versus canon? And really the only thing that stands out to me is what happens in the Legends after Return of the Jedi with the character. So do you have a preference?
Honestly, that the Legends, like pre-Palpatine, basically Darth Plagueis. That's I absolutely love that novel. Really, it delves into the character, like what makes him him, essentially. I mean, of course, the post movies Palpatine, it's interesting to say the least. You know, basically possessing his own clone and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But pre that's definitely my favorite.
Nice.
And definitely Legends.
Yeah, I really dig that book, Darth Plagueis, because like you said, it really does allow you a window into who this character was. Like, a lot of characters are corrupted into the dark side. They have this tragic fall from grace, as it were, or this ultimate journey that they started in a place of decency and then were just devolved into pure corruption and hate. Sheev was always kind of in that line of hate. Like,
and it's still so weird him having a first name now.
Yeah.
Every time I hear it, it's so weird. I mean, it's a pretty cool name, but God, it's just so weird. And hey, there he is.
Yep.
There.
This way.
There we go. Other one. Yeah.
Aha!
Oh, awesome.
Hi, Lolly, in the chat room. Good to see you.
Hi.
All right, so, guys, there's a lot to go over with this character. Maybe we could touch on... I want to touch on the absurdity of the character, if we can, before we get into sort of the timeline of how he came out. Because in, like, Star Wars, there was, like, a off-the-cuff reference to the Emperor, I think, and that was it, right? In the chamber where they said that he dissolved the Senate. But
Yep.
And then you saw, like, the chimp face version hologram. Like, the chimpanzee, do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
So,
Wasn't
like,
even a dude.
yeah. So this character has always been shrouded in mystery. Did you prefer the original trilogy's take on him as a more mysterious character rather than the beginning of fleshing him out in the prequel trilogy?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's... Okay, so it's kind of a conundrum, because I feel that's where his power is, but obviously his power, as per, like, Legends and everything, is just how out there he is, how open he is. I mean, of course, it doesn't come into play until he dissolves the Senate and whatnot and becomes the Emperor, but yeah, just the idea of hiding behind everything, but still doing all that stuff behind the scenes, like that was my favorite part of him.
It was a bit of a double-sided sword, I think, when I read Darth Plagueis, because up until that novelization, you, as a viewer, thought of him, the Emperor, Palpatine, as the architect of everything.
Definitely.
That book changed everything.
Yeah.
Like, he was no longer the architect. And so do you feel like it was a slight to the character? Like you grew up, literally grew up in this case, knowing this monstrosity, and then now, years later, there's a novel that says, well, it wasn't really him, it was his master that set this whole plan in motion. He just sort of piggybacked on it and, did what Siths do.
See, I don't know. Like, I've read it a few times, and I mean, of course, that's kind of what you pick up from the beginning. But subsequent readings, I don't feel like he was as much of a pawn, I guess. Like, I feel like he was definitely manipulating his master a lot more than he let on. Mm-hmm. And that's how he was able to get to where he was and ultimately destroy his master.
That's true. And what about that one point of contention? I know we're just talking about that book really quick here, and we'll get to more stuff here in a little bit. But what about that one point that seemed to be at the core of almost every Sith master-apprentice relationship, of the passing of the torch of information, of knowledge, where Plagueis never actually passed on how to control midichlorians and the creation of life to Palpatine, even though, like, it seems like that would be the one thing you would want to do if you were Palpatine or Darth Sidious before you murdered the dude. Right? Yeah.
Well, the thing, like, and of course this goes into Legends, like with the clone emperors and whatnot, is he actually did sort of pick it up. I mean, it's not so much in that novel necessarily. It's, of course, reading further on down the line.
Like the Dark Empire.
But yeah. But yeah, but personally, I would have waited off him until I at least had a better understanding of it. Because he did go through a lot of his master's work, like when he wasn't paying attention, just to sort of pick up what he could when he could.
And from the beginning, he was always a collector of dark side artifacts.
Oh yeah.
And tomes. So it's not like it was important for him to have a master so that he could be taught the essentials of combat, the Sith code, and really, the rigors of formal training. But like, he had access to the alchemy, the Sith alchemy, and the knowledge from the beginning. He maybe he didn't fully comprehend it, but he had that access. And so as a character for him, I always thought that was really interesting, that he was literally like his own. He took a Luke Skywalker version of study. Where we're now in a place where Luke had to learn things on his own. He went, and this is sort of in the gap between the movies of the original trilogy and the newest one that's going out. But he went to find lost Jedi artifacts and temples, and now this new movie is going to be his discovery and the culmination of all that knowledge that he gained and learned on his own. Well, that's what Sheev did from the beginning with the dark side.
Oh yeah,
and it's the way that they're setting it up now. Oh gosh, we haven't even gotten to like his life stuff yet, but the way that they're setting the films up now, with the idea of Snoke being an ancient Sith entity of some sort, at least that's my interpretation of it. And how Palpatine was constantly getting this archaic dark side messages from unknown space, which caused him to go to Jakku and to the observation posts around the galaxy and try to find, even sending his own battalions. I'm using the wrong word there, but his own Star Destroyers into deep space to find this intelligence that had been reaching out to him in visions and stuff. Like, his connection was so deep, it seems a little strange to me in the new movies that they're not even mentioning him. Like, they're mentioning Vader more than Palpatine, but everything that's happening in that last series is directly because of what Palpatine did.
I sort of see it like a whole Harry Potter thing of he who cannot be named. It's like, let's just not bring up his name because that guy was a douche.
It was
just my take on
douche.
Yes.
Yeah. So where did let's do a little bit of history on this character. Where did Sheev come from?
Well, he was born what was it? 84 BBY on Naboo.
Really specific. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to take notes now, because I'm going to have to up my game.
I'd like to say that I have a note list, but... Well, God, you know what? It's a Star Wars podcast. I can sound like a...
It's true.
Because you're listening. But anyways, yeah. He was born on Naboo. to a wealthy family, of course. It kind of goes without saying with all the power he has. A very old aristocratic lineage. They were always in politics and money. There's a lot of contention between him and his parents, mostly his father. If you've read Darth Plagueis, you know this. But basically, he wanted more power. They were happy to stay where they were, and that's pretty much where everything started for him.
Yeah. Yeah, Lolly's saying, just in reference to why the Emperor is not mentioned, but Vader is, because Vader is more sympathetic with the audience, and I think that's a good explanation.
Yeah.
And the Skywalkers are the core of the entire series anyway, so might as well stick with that. I always thought it was interesting because there's the Legends in the canon difference from the early age that I understand, and I'm basing some of this off of just my own readings and also like Wikipedia and stuff like that, where it's really when Darth Plagueis comes into the picture. Like, that's the big difference, and how detailed of a character Darth Plagueis is, because in canon, as I understand it, he's not even necessarily a moon, M-O-U-N, a moon. I don't know the species that.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so I
don't know.
I don't even know if that's still official or not. Just because the only canon stuff is from the movies on his reference, right?
Yeah.
And that was when he was sitting down with.
I could have swore
Anakin.
He was also in Clone Wars, or maybe it's just because they all look the same to me. But
yeah, I don't think, because Plagueis was dead by then. By Clone Wars.
Yeah, no. Was he? Yeah, never mind. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've watched that show.
You're scaring me, because like the book brought him all the way into like a Phantom Menace, but that was the end of it, right?
Yeah, it's right up. Yeah, basically the very end of it is pretty much coinciding with the very end of Phantom Menace.
Right. Yeah, and I always thought it was interesting because according to the book, the entrance of Darth Maul he was a Sith assassin, but in canon, the entrance of Darth Maul was a direct apprentice to Darth Sidious through the Night Sister Mother Townsend or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a different like journey to get there, but I did always like the idea that Darth Maul was a Sith apprentice and not just a Sith assassin.
Yeah.
Because I always felt the book kind of made him sound less than.
Well, I don't know. The part that made him sound less than was just the fact that he was a crybaby teenager. Like, I have always been a huge fan of Darth Maul up until I read that book, and then I was like, he's just a crybaby. I mean, it makes sense, but still.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like character development goes, I could totally see that, but we should do a show just on Darth Maul at some point.
Yeah,
and so I like going into the Phantom Menace and going into Attack of the Clones, I always just assumed that Darth Maul was the apprentice, and that it was a weird political connection that Sidious had with Count Dooku, thank you. And so in canon, that's kind of how it was up until Darth Maul's death, and then he turned Count Dooku into Darth Tenebrous, I think it was.
Tyrannus.
Who's Tenebrous? Why am I...
Tenebrous is Darth Plagueis' master.
Okay, yeah. This is so convoluted. I feel bad that I don't have it exactly right.
That's okay. You've got a life. I don't. I have a library.
Well, I'm glad that your brain is here, because I would be off my rocker. So the relationship between Anakin Skywalker, the young childhood Anakin Skywalker, and Emperor Palpatine, or Senator Palpatine at this point, is one that I kind of want to examine a little bit more if we can, because I always thought that was an interesting, it was an interesting connection between the two. Completely different worlds. The only reason why he was interested in the kid, as far as the move, like the projected reason, is because he was just a force-sensitive kid that was discovered on a backwoods planet, Tatooine.
Yeah.
and that he just accidentally destroyed the blockade starship or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
But really, there's like the idea of the, you know, the chosen one behind all of this. Do you think that Darth Plagueis was aware of that? Like, how aware is Darth Plagueis of Anakin Skywalker as the chosen one?
Well, at this point in time, I mean, of course, trying to mash up timelines, and it's been probably like a year or two since I've read the book last. I believe this is actually post-accident when he's just crippled. He's got all kinds of appliances on him, and he's like not doing well. So instead of doing his cover stuff, like being, you know, a banker and whatnot, he is just solely working on his studies.
Talking about Plagueis.
Oh yeah, why am I talking about Plagueis? Whatever.
But that's fine, because there is a connection with that.
Well, yeah, that's I lost my train of thought.
So at what point do you think Palpatine was aware of Anakin as a significant player in the Force?
He had to have been almost immediately. With how strong he was, and with the fact that he would get, you know, visions and voices telling him things about essentially bringing about the prophecy. Like, he had to have known the second that the blockade exploded. Because, I mean, you got to figure, like, he had a hand in the blockade.
Yeah.
And when you go into like Legends, like deep into Legends with battle meditation and stuff, like, he used to command armies that way. He used to help them, essentially using his Force abilities to heighten their non-Force sensitive abilities. So he had to have known, like, immediately, and that's why he latched on to him.
That's interesting. I liked the idea that Plagueis actually thought that he may have created Anakin or some form of life, but then in canon that wasn't the case. Anakin was a result of the Force needing to balance itself out, right?
Yeah.
It's a strange connection that was never actually explained in the series very well, I think. They just left so much up to perspectives of characters. It seemed like something that they should have really hammered home.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, so Palpatine is mentoring this young man as the Senator Palpatine. In his night job as Darth Sidious, he is cultivating and training this deadly Sith apprentice, Darth Maul, who is probably one of the favorite dark side apprentices, like, I would say, of all time. Like, he's just his look alone is just so amazing.
Oh yeah.
You thinking, okay, so in Clone Wars, Darth Maul was dead. It was Count Dooku who was the new apprentice, which that had to be a hell of a turn, I think, for Palpatine.
Oh yeah.
I mean, as a Sith Lord, to not only convince the most powerful Jedi on the Senate, other than Yoda, arguably. I mean, it could be not him, but he's supposed to be one of like the top tier Jedi swordsmen. To not only abandon his Jedi heritage, but then turn to the dark side. That's a huge get for a Sith master.
I don't know. I don't really find it that hard of a leap, because essentially, if you look at their backgrounds, they're pretty similar. So the fact that, you know, Palpatine, who, you know, no argument, like, he's one of the master manipulators, like, that he could turn somebody that he understood so well, not really that surprising. Especially because you got to figure, oh man, what book was it? Well, anyways, like, one of his vacation homes or whatever, Darth Tyrannus, it's on a dark side planet. So he's already, anytime he goes there, he's already, you know, being touched by the dark side.
Oh, I did not know that.
To be able to switch, I don't remember what it is. It's one of the ones before, or right in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
It's a good read, though.
Just to respond to Lolly, yeah, Anakin literally is a cosmic side effect. Like a force side effect.
Yeah.
It kind of went bad for a while, but that's okay. The master planning behind the separatist movement to the reactionary overthrowing of the current like prime minister, I can't remember the damn reference, the term, in the Senate, where he was then nominated. Yeah, Supreme Chancellor. Where then he was nominated by a fucking Gungan. And then, brought as the new Supreme Chancellor. And then given himself the complexities of all of that in order to pull it off was just stunning. Do you think he would have been able to do it without the financial and just mentorship of Plagueis on his own?
No. Especially if we're going off of the book, like essentially between Palpatine's vast fortune, which sort of was tied up with Plagueis as well, because his family was dead. But even all that considering, I mean, Plagueis was a part of the banking community. Like, he had ungodly amounts of money that he just kind of threw at him. So I don't know. It'd be hard to believe that he could have done it on his own, I guess, as easily as he did, I guess.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I want to step on that rule of two here really quick while we're talking about him and his master, because this is sort of the end of the rule of two with Vader and Palpatine. Do you think that that's something that's going to come back? Because it doesn't seem like they're referencing Snoke as a Sith at all.
Yeah.
Or he's some ancient version, or he's some transcended version, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, it might just be different sects, like because of course the Sith that we know from the movies and stuff, that's the Order of the Sith. They're essentially, not blood related, but they're a direct line. You can basically do a family tree of, the original red skinned Sith species down to current day Siths. And it gets touched on a bit in like a lot of the later on legend books like Fate, all that stuff. But there's different versions of the same thing. They're just dark side adepts, but they're not Siths. So I think it's going to be, with being the same basic idea, it's just going to be a different name. Like the Knights of Ren, for instance. Right. I mean, there's an S on that, so they're going to be plural. Like a rule of two, completely gone with them, if it ever existed with them. So I think with the last movie, that was it.
I'm a little bummed by that, if I'm honest, because that, since Darth Bane, that's a history of, that is what the Sith were. This is what the cosmic bad guys were. And now I understand that Disney wants to change the idea so that we're not like, oh, well, we already know what's going to happen. They want to keep us on our toes and entertain us, but that dichotomy of the master and apprentice of just darkness is so alluring as an audience member. To no longer have that, and to know that now there's this sort of group that may or may not have any Force reference at all, that is ruled by a kid who is not even a master of himself. Yeah. Who is then being taught by this mysterious new figure that doesn't seem to fit into any known orders or even knowledge of the Empire. So or the galaxy, I mean, at large. I don't know. It's kind of a bummer to me. I liked the order that existed before.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Weird.
Definitely agree.
Lolly's asking, do you know the backstory of why the Sith have to eventually kill their master to graduate?
I haven't read Darth Bane. I don't actually know the entire rule of two. A bit, the dumbed down version, as I know it, essentially was when he was coming up. This is, of course, the height of the Old Republic. There's Sith empire. It's not just a few people. Like, it's an actual empire. Everybody's using the dark side. If they have even like a minute bit of force sensitivity, and he felt that there could be a lot more power if it was only with a small amount of people. That's why he went about destroying the entire Sith empire. And I don't remember exactly how it came down to just him and one other person, but
a lot of it has
basically
to do,
was
I think,
power.
with the infighting that
Yeah.
existed before that point. The Sith Empire could never truly grow and have a singular focus unless there was someone at the very top and someone apprenticing them, that rule of two, in order to say, this is what we're doing, you're going to assist me in completing this goal. The idea of killing the master and then becoming the master, that's just the natural part of just life in general. You know, as a human being, you survive, ideally, your parents, and so you're sort of, it's now your turn to lead. It's now your turn to be the adult and to, you know, have your own mastermind. That's kind of where the apprentice comes in. They want to take the secrets, which is why most Dark Lords of the Sith hide information from their apprentices. And there's probably massive amounts of information that has been, like Sith alchemy, that has been lost to history simply because they didn't want to share it with their apprentice, because once they did, they had nothing to teach the apprentice. The apprentice didn't need him anymore, and they'd kill him. So they sort of use that knowledge over them. I always thought that was interesting.
That's that aspect of it has always killed me as like somebody who's incessantly reading. It's like, oh no, there's knowledge that's gone.
Yeah.
Why can't it come back?
See, and bringing it back to Palpatine, part of what I hate about humankind is our short-sightedness. When Spanish conquistadors came to South America and destroyed remnants of all of their histories and religions in the name of Christianity, as a human being who is just fascinated by ancient history, that's infuriating. When Napoleon's soldiers are firing their cannons at ancient Egyptian monuments, that infuriates me. There's just no respect for human history or evolution, and it's the exact same thing that you see in Star Wars with Emperor Palpatine wiping away the remnants of the Jedi Temple, even though, to be fair, to the Jedi Temple, the Jedis did that to the original temple that was there, which is actually a dark side temple. So, you know, maybe that particular instance isn't a good example. But just wipe away all their history, right?
He did hold on to a lot of stuff, though. I mean, aside from obviously destroying what he could, like a lot of the text and stuff, like the holochromes, he saved all that, though. Well, as much as he could.
Really?
And then, you know, post Clone Wars, he finally found out where Korriban was, and you know, since he's the Emperor and can do whatever the hell he wants, he changed the name of it to Morabon, so nobody was the wiser, and essentially made it a barren planet, and that's where he hid like a vast amount of his collection of the ancient tomes and stuff.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting. The whitewashing of the Jedi Order, that just no arguments over, it just went over so well with the galactic populace at large. I mean, I'm sure there was small sects like arguing and stuff, but it's just weird to see it completely wiped away, like everything that they'd done, because it wasn't just like a generation of work. Like the Sith were gone for 1,000 years. So I mean, that's an insane amount of generations of lineage of Jedi being the guardians of peace in the galaxy. To have it wiped out in literally 2 generations by this Sith Master is mind-blowing to me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we saw the dumbing down of humankind through medieval times because the church, the Holy Order of the Roman Catholic Church, forbid the teaching of education to virtually everyone, simply because they needed people to work the fields, they needed people to build and make and produce. Only priests could read and write, and then it was only church information, and so
Yeah.
we were really stinted as a human species during that time. Arguably, that same mentality is you're only going to be learning propaganda from the state is the exact approach that Palpatine took for the galaxy at large. And he was so brilliantly good at it. It was just crazy. Sometimes I feel like modern day dictators are trying to take a page from his book. Because he's in this fantasy
We're not
world.
doing as well.
No. Twitter's not quite the best format.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of play around the idea of Emperor Palpatine luring in the rebels into a trap at Return of the Jedi era. And he really thought he had him. Like at that, the second Death Star was still being constructed, but they made sure that the weapons was still up and running at the time. Could he be that short-sighted, realistically? Like, do you think he was so amazing with everything up until that point of seeing every side and eventuality and working his way through? It always just blew my mind that a farm boy and a small group of kids outwitted the dude who literally had the galaxy in the palm of his hands for 30 years and had been manipulating it for 30 years before that.
Well, problem was, it was like a serial killer. Got cocky and got caught. Just his version of getting caught is getting thrown down a shaft.
We've all been there.
He just the problem he had was he severely underestimated his opponents.
Yeah.
Because of course you go that long being unopposed, in a sense, like not feeling that there's an actual enemy out there that could best you. They just got cocky when they took him out.
That's wild. Do you want to talk about the contingency? Are you familiar with this?
The contingency.
Yeah, so in the Aftermath books, Emperor Palpatine had a contingency, which was an operation that would unfold if he actually died. And he had, this is all just outlined in the last 2 books, really in the last Aftermath book, ultimately. But I'm looking for the reference here, so I'm 100% on the facts. But this was after, the war was coming to... The Rebel Alliance did not yet fully have itself formed by the time that he was receiving visions from the Outer Rim. From early on in his career as the Dark Lord of the Sith, he was just feeling this pull from the outside of the galaxy and didn't fully understand it. So he would go to these ancient listening posts around the galaxy that were existed for either studying Sith alchemy or, researching the Outer Rim worlds or, telescopes pointing into deep space. Each outpost had a different plan, but the Emperor had this philosophy that if an Emperor ever died, that was, if the Dark Lord of the Sith who ran the galaxy ever died, then the galaxy didn't deserve to live. Because ultimately, it was the Sith's mandate to rule. Like, that's who and what they are. And if he was ever killed for whatever reason, then the remnants of the Empire would destroy themselves and whatever enemy destroyed them as quickly as possible. His plan was, there was the observatory within Jakku, at this core of Jakku, and one of the remaining admirals was tasked with taking the hoard of Sith artifacts that Palpatine had collected. This is all spoiler territory for people who haven't read this.
I haven't read any of the Aftermath. I don't care. Okay. I still... I don't want to know an ending necessarily, but it's not going to ruin a book for me. Like Chewbacca being dead, I haven't read those books.
Oh, man,
I cried when I found out.
That was
but
that was a harsh one. Yeah. He's not dead in canon, people, so don't freak out.
Yeah.
The fuzzy... He's alive and well. So the contingency was to throw all these Sith artifacts into this basic tunnel to the core of Jakku after they had, sort of making their last stand against the entirety of the New Republic in space outside of this planet. By tossing these artifacts into the core, it would destroy the planet, destroy the remaining Empire, but also destroy the New Republic that was fighting the Empire at the same time. And any survivors would then go into deep space, where he had already sent a massive contingency of Star Destroyers and just Imperial explorers, and meet up there at a point. And that is what ended up turning into the New Republic. I'm sorry, the New Order. the New Order that you see in the Force Awakens.
Gotcha.
So that was all his plan, like from the very, very beginning. If I die, you're all going with me. I'm taking every single one of you worthless Imperials and Rebels at the same exact time. He even had Operation Cinder, which was explored in the comics, that after Return of the Jedi, these satellites went into orbit around Naboo and a couple other planets that just intensified the electricity within the atmosphere and caused lightning strikes to decimate the land all over the planet. And so the fledgling New Republic was freaking out, trying to find ways of stopping this from happening, this result of destroying the Emperor. So he had some serious booby traps on the galaxy.
I'd say so.
Man,
I really need to read that trilogy.
You've got to check it out. Yeah, it's really good. But it also, it sets up the idea of the Knights of Ren as well. And so you have a much firmer understanding of who they are and how they were just like Emperor Palpatine. They were individuals who, they were just like Emperor Palpatine in the sense that they were getting visions from deep outer rim space. They weren't Force sensitive. They were just fans of Darth Vader, and they were fans of, the idea of Sith, but they didn't have any Force abilities. At least in the books, none of them did. And so, to me, that makes sense why someone like Kylo Ren would then be able to control them all, because they're all wannabes, and he's actually Force sensitive, and part of a family line that is really strong.
Yeah.
So that was always interesting to me. What are some of your favorite parts of Palpatine as a character? Like ideas.
Honestly, I got to keep going back to Darth Plagueis, because I'm pretty bad. I haven't read too much into the new canon, as it were. But just seeing how devious he is, he's a master manipulator, and just reading, especially with that book, because obviously we already know what happens at the end. Just duh, he doesn't die. Just getting all that backstory of leading up to that moment when we first discover him, it gets me every time. That's one of the books that I've read numerous times, just for that reason. Darth Plagueis is cool and all, but the star of the show is definitely Palpatine.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it was definitely written with that sense of, we need to set this character up that's going to ultimately be in control.
Oh yeah.
So Lolly's asking his cunning. What do you think are some? Setting up the entire galactic civil war and then manipulating his way into an emperor status is proof of his cunning.
It's
just that.
Pretty good. Yeah.
That alone is pretty damn amazing.
Oh yeah. Well, he set it all up. He was playing both sides just so he could come out and everybody else be damned. Yeah.
And to be fair, Plagueis at the end, he was taking a back seat to it anyway. He was less interested in galactic manipulation than he was trying to, regenerate his own body and his own experiments.
Yeah.
He had tons of just creature experiments going on.
Oh yeah.
So he was very much like the idea of, in fantasy you have that archetype of the old wizard in a tower who doesn't concern himself with the outside world and just really focuses on his own stuff. That was Plagueis at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I feel like
Plagueis.
I'm mixing people up. The doggone names. That was him at the end, and so he totally left the door open for Sidious to take over and manipulate him and destroy him.
Yeah.
I feel like that was his biggest flaw, is that he didn't keep his eye on the ball.
Mm. Well, same with Palpatine.
That's true. Yeah.
That's what took them both out.
And it is weird to think too, because Palpatine, his singular drive at all times was power, and arguably that's going to be every Sith's drive, and ultimately, I guess that's what Plagueis' drive was as well. But it was the discovery of new power, because Palpatine as a character had always been interested from the very beginning with expanding his knowledge of the dark side, expanding his mastery of the dark side. He was a master swordsman. He went toes with Windu, which is an amazing idea.
And won. He beat Windu.
I mean, to be fair, he had a little help in the beating part, but
I don't care. That's still impressive. Mace Windu is arguably the best swordsman.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I think in lore he is, like, straight up, because he had mastered. Well, did he create that sword fighting technique of using the dark side against itself?
Yeah.
So that alone is good enough to.
Yeah, it was only him and one of his apprentices that could use it, and it was, of course, him being the only master.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so being able as a Sith Lord to not only destroy 5 Jedi that have come to arrest you, but then also destroy the most powerful Jedi swordman that arguably had ever lived up to that point, it's pretty damn impressive. You know?
Yeah.
So he was already an incredibly powerful character, and for him to then say that there is something that is greater than my power, outside of the galaxy calling to me, the possibilities are so exciting in my mind of where Disney's going to take that. Like, that's an incredible thing. I never got that until Disney took over as a message. Like, I never knew about that part of it. And I don't think it was a thing until Disney took over. Because all, like, the Dark Empire stuff was about him being the ultimate character trying to live through these other clone forms or through other people's children, and like it was never like there was a greater than him. He was the ultimate.
No, absolutely. Like, and especially to try to possess one of the most powerful upcoming Jedis. Like, I mean, young baby Anakin Jr., I mean, if he hadn't been killed off by Uncle George, he would have very easily been better than Luke Skywalker, like, hands down. Yeah,
so this is Legends that you're referring to. Can you explain who that is?
Okay, so Ben doesn't exist. The Solos end up having 3 kids. Jason, who ends up becoming Darth Caedus. Yeah, and then Anakin, who, like, even as a baby, he's straight up acting exactly like his namesake. He was a master with mechanical stuff. Like, essentially, he could find life in anything and could rebuild it to work for him, pretty much. And then there's Jaina, the daughter, who was a badass too.
Yeah, even in Legends, even Luke, he hooked up with, like, Mara. Is it Mara Jade?
Yep, Mara Jade. Mara Jade.
Sort of the right hand of the Emperor.
Mm-hmm. She was the Emperor's hand. Like, essentially, she was the assassin that Vader couldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved the Legends just because there's this rich tapestry of history that had been written that before I even got into any of it. So I was discovering it all anew, and it was exciting. And yeah, they did, like, rehash the idea of, the sort of idea of a Death Star over and over again, and they kept going back to the same bad guy of the Emperor trying to, come out. But they ended up breaking from that and going into some really interesting territory, as far as, like, the Yuuzhan Vong was very interesting to me. And, they kept tapping into this idea of this ancient Sith that, for those who had followed the Knights of the Old Republic storylines, understood. But if you didn't follow all of that sort of prehistory stuff, it was this unknown bit of information that was just really exciting. And I genuinely think that's where Disney is taking us now.
I hope so.
I don't think they're going to be playing with Yuuzhan Vong at all. They're going to be taking us to the Old Republic. And I think the gateway to that is going to be Snoke.
Yeah. I do really hope that somehow the Maw comes into this, because that just do my little fanboy heart great. Like,
And
I
I
love the
wouldn't be
idea of at
surprised.
least that being canon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because after they do this trilogy, which I just to get back to the topic quickly, I really hope they bring Palpatine in some sense, whether it's his love of Sith artifacts or some remnant of him. Like, somehow I would love to have him still around, even if it's just in commentary, as like, wow, this is where we could be going. You remember Palpatine? So just because he was such a huge influence in everything, in every asset. He set up the first 3 movies, the prequel first 3, and then he was the main player in the original trilogy. So just to have him drop dead and no one ever mentions him again drives me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Like, he was so... And, Snoke's reference of, I watched The Empire Rise and Fall, as if he is so far beyond the petty... like he's a parent watching... Sidious play in the sandbox in a kindergarten. It was just so insulting. Like, this guy we've never even heard of you, man.
Yeah.
How can you pretend like you're some master of whatever if we've never even heard of you? Like, this guy was...
Well, what would be great is if he was that voice of Palpatine, or that he kept getting.
Yeah. And I think they are going to play that out.
That'd be great. I hope so.
I just don't want it to be over. And so I'm glad that we get these shows like Star Wars Rebels that's still hitting on that character. And we got these goofy shows like Lego Star Wars, the Freemaker Adventures, that are still hitting on that character. Because it's, Emperor Palpatine is just, he's a masterful character that set up the entirety of every bit of storyline that we know about this universe.
Yeah.
And now he's just sort of like gone.
Yeah, unceremoniously just kicked to the side.
Yeah, he literally was just like realizing his master plan of destroying the Skywalker twerp, and then his dad was just like, you know what? I don't think so.
Yeah,
just throw him down a hole. Like, poor guy. What the fuck? No love.
I know that is one thing that bothered me. His death, God, it was just so uneventful. Like, it should have been bigger.
I really would have loved to see, and of course it's all after the fact because we didn't know in the original trilogy that he was a master swordsman, but it would have been badass for him to go toes with Vader just for a little bit. Like,
oh God,
how
yes.
dare you? Rah! And just like fighting and stuff. That would be awesome. The nerd in me would explode.
Definitely.
Or if he just, like, when Vader picked him up, he just stopped shooting lightning and, like, did some, like, I don't know, like, a keto move and, like, flipped Vader around, and that's when they started fighting or something. Because, he was, like, massively old and stuff, but all old guys could fight crazy. Look at Yoda.
He was only 88. Exactly. Yoda was 900.
He could have totally done it. Just put the cane down, pull out the lightsaber, and just start dancing, man. Go crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get a little speculation then, since we're near the end of this. Do you think that he will ever come back in spirit? Not like Force spirit or anything like that, but just that he would come back in the storyline at all?
Honestly, I'd actually be kind of surprised if he didn't. Because they're setting it up, like, the new trilogy to be very in lieu of how the original trilogy was, where you only get so much information with this first film, and then second film they really start pounding it in of, okay, well, here's all the backstory that you were dying for. So I think it's almost necessary that in the coming film that he's going to play a bigger role in it.
I think it'd be interesting because there's a lot of rumors about Anakin coming back as a Force ghost. There's a lot of rumors about even Obi-Wan and Yoda coming back as Force ghosts, even Qui-Gon Jinn. So
interesting.
There's just a new understanding of the Force with this new iteration of movies. And because they're spinning it all on its head, to not bring up this one singular character who was the mastermind of everything seems really short-sighted. Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense at all, and I feel like it would be a disservice to the character itself. If Sith had a way of living forever, and if you believe in the Legends information, they always did, whether it was just a piece of them or not, they always lived forever, then we have to see this character again. Like, it would just be brilliant, you know?
Yeah. I really think that that's probably going to be how, like, Snoke's full introduction of an actual character, not just somebody who's talking through a hologram. I really think that's how it's going to be, is him perhaps discussing defaults and where he's picking up from where essentially Palpatine left off.
Yeah.
At least I hope so.
Yeah, there was a bunch of rumors that it was Order 66 that woke Snoke up from his deep sleep. And so I've been watching tons of theories and stuff like that. So this is all speculation. But if that's the case, then after Order 66, that's when Palpatine started hearing this call, because it was Snoke that was calling him. It's an interesting idea, you know. Then we are back to the Sith again at some point.
Yeah.
And then we could spin off into an Old Republic, you know, like a prequel of Snoke
I
when
hope
he was
so.
a young Sith apprentice back in the Old Republic, or, you know, it just brings this really interesting new approach to it, which would be really, really cool. And a great way to expand the franchise for the audience and for Disney to make tons of money, too.
All they gotta do is make a Revan movie, and I'll be fucking throwing my credit cards and everything at them. I don't even give a shit.
Toys,
if it
everything.
sucks. Pretty much. Like, I could care less. It could be the worst fucking movie in the world. I will see that at least 7 or 8 times just because it's Revan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just the ancient Sith Order is so fun as a storyline that to not tap into that seems short-sighted, you know. So it'll be interesting, and I think this next movie will shine all the light on it that we need. But there is a lot of space between these trilogies for them to play with their anthology movies. The entire Luke Skywalker story of where he went after Return of the Jedi and what he did until he got, you know, stranded on that island, intentionally or not, at the beginning or the end of Force Awakens. There's a huge 30-year history that they could tap into, which I think would be incredibly fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where you could have these really great experiences of remnants of Sith. When he's going and hunting down these artifacts or this knowledge of the Jedi, he will inevitably stumble across the dark side and
you'd think
other
you kind of have
Force
to.
practitioners. Because one thing that this new series has done is taught us that there are many other ways of interpreting and using the Force than just the Jedi and Sith. And so, you know, you've got the entire Night Sisters culture, let alone everything that Star Wars Rebels has brought to light of the Bendu and just these other creatures like Maz Kanata, who can wield the Force even though they're not officially trained in it. It's just like this innate ability of theirs to tap into. So it's going to be really crazy interesting. So, okay, I guess to close the discussion, maybe, what are the worst parts of that character to you?
The cheesy lines. as much as I love everything about that character, there's sometimes it just gets me. It's like, oh God, why did he say that? Like, when he gets, like, okay, the worst part for me is the Windu death scene. Like, pretty much all that leading up.
Oh, I'm wounded, I can't take it.
Yeah, God, that bothered me to hell. I mean, I understood why he did it. Obviously, it shows why he did it. But, God, it's like, no, this is the most powerful person in the entire galaxy. He shouldn't be acting like that.
Yeah.
Like, even if he's putting up a front,
Yep.
there's still better ways to go about it. But,
well, I think this is actually... I'm sorry, what? Right there? Oh no, the video froze. Okay, you're back. It was just froze for a second. That was weird.
am I breaking up a second? Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
You should be good. I think this is a great segue into our closing segment. We actually got a tape from a Taco Bell in Coruscant of actually the Emperor ordering Taco Bell. So we're going to play that as a closing segment for this show. Thank you everyone for tuning in live. Lolly, it's so great to always see you. And for everyone tuning in after the fact, thank you guys so much. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you.
Until we can chat again, may the Force be with you.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to Taco Bell, sir. What can I make for you today?
I would like 2 gordita crunches because I like something soft and something crunchy.
Okay.
And I will take 2 nacho bel grandes with extra dark side sauce.
Actually, sir, we have discontinued the dark side sauce. Sorry about that.
I would like to speak to your manager. That is completely unacceptable.
Okay, just give me 1 second. This guy out there is throwing a fit over dark side sauce being gone. What should I tell him?
What do you mean what you tell? I don't care. Why does he need the light side sauce?
I don't know.
Look, all we have is the light side sauce. The dark side sauce didn't do so well, people didn't like it, and so we didn't reorder it. Just let him know.
Okay. Alright, sorry, sir, the manager is indisposed at the moment. He did want me to tell you, though, that we are completely out of it. One thing we can offer is we actually have this really nice light side sauce. Would you be interested in that, by chance?
Light side sauce is unacceptable. Go into the back and check again.
Okay, sir, just give me 1 second. What the hell? This guy is asking me to go check in the back again. There's no back. I don't think he understands how small this...
Who the hell does this guy think he is? Is he like the Emperor or something? Look, tell him he's gonna deal with the light side sauce, or, you know, I mean, we got the Yoda bobbleheads.
Okay. Alright, I'll go talk to him. Alright, sir, sorry about the inconvenience. Like I said, we're completely out of the dark side sauce. I wasn't able to find any. The manager did tell me, though, if you're fine with taking the light side sauce, we can offer you this brand new product. It hasn't even actually left the boxes yet, but we can throw in a Yoda bobblehead if that would interest you.
Am I to understand that you are offering me a Yoda bobblehead?
Yeah, yes, sir.
You had failed me for the last time. Now you will feel the full power of the dark side of the Force.